What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of the Full Contact Podcast. I am Dean, joined today by my co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, the man who is the reason I was not able to consent to life, Bob.
Great introduction.
You're welcome. I'm going to have many more down the pipe. It's just going to come up what comes to my mind.
Okay. All right. So what do we want to talk about today?
I mean, hey, and what other excuse do we need for a father and son to do something together, right?
Well, and I think that's a typical father thing. Anytime you ask your father for something, for the most part, he's going to want to do it.
Hell yeah.
It's about a week since the Freedom 250 UFC event,
Mm-hmm.
which I watched the whole thing, and I was so pumped up at the end of it. I was up till probably 2:30 in the morning before I could go to sleep.
It was probably the most American thing I've ever seen in my life.
It-
Literally, it was I casually watch UFC and I think it's great personally. I just like with any sport, I'm a casual viewer. I don't have the patience to
Mhm.
keep up with it on a regular, but it was awesome seeing that. Um, I unfortunately didn't get to watch the whole thing because I ended up had to go home early for work, but it is what it is. But it was probably one of the greatest. And I think with all the different things that was going on between UFC, now we're in the FIFA World Cup at the same time, there's been a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it debate back and forth, very polarizing feelings when it comes to all these things going on right now, as in within America. That's literally anything.
Right.
You could literally talk about bread and you're going to be fucking polarized.
Well, I mean, I went into it with somewhat of a jaded attitude.
Mhm.
Even though I voted for Trump, I have no reason to feel that way other than social media, the media coverage, posting news story after news story, just criticizing this event and talking about how it's so inappropriate. Um, and so you kind of went into it with this sort of negative vibe. I not been a UFC fan. I've watched a few fights here and there very casually. But so I went in with sort of low expectations, and the more this show progressed, the better it got. And the main
Mhm.
event was just phenomenal.
Mhm.
That was the capper. Any sporting event, as much as you appreciate a certain sport and enjoy it, if there's a team or a person in the sport that you're rooting for whatever reason, it makes it that much more intense. And this was a underdog story from what I gathered. I mean, the guy that was the lightweight champion was a Spanish, I think,
I think
Georgian
he
Spanish.
was Hispanic of some sort.
So, and this challenger was an American, uh, Jason
Gaethje, something along those lines.
Gaethje,
I'm horrible at pronouncing names.
Justin Gaethje.
I'm horrible at pronouncing names.
Well, anyway, so I mean, if you go on YouTube and watch the entrance, the walkout they call it in UFC, it's just amazing. Every one of the fighters started in a different part of the White House, and for this main event, Gaethje started in the Oval Office.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking at the Declaration of Independence, and with the flag, American flag wrapped around him. And they played this song, this haunting song played by the Marine Corps band was just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people probably know it as a Johnny Cash song, Ain't No Grave, but I found out it dates all the way back to the 30s. It was a, spiritual gospel song from back in the day. Um, Anyway, it just was a phenomenal walkout song, and the visual of him walking out, and then the fight. Put it this way, I'm not an expert, but he sure seemed to be putting much more of a beating on the other guy than the other guy was
Yeah.
doing to him.
I mean, I didn't catch the main event, but I've heard a lot of good things. I mean, for the fact that it went 4 rounds, I mean, it was obviously a little bit of back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
As you never know what to expect with UFC. I thought it was even more American that the fact that literally every single fight at that event ended in some type of a knockout, which I think is phenomenal. It just, I think this is kind of, and this will segue even more into like the World Cup. Um, feels like there is some level of a resurgence in American patriotism, and I think it's starting to show within our sports. It actually kind of dates back to whenever we took on Canada in the Olympics.
Mhm. Sure.
And it was like the modern day Miracle on Ice, except we weren't going up against legitimate communists.
Well, and there should be a resurgence of patriotism. It's the 250th anniversary of the founding of the country.
Yeah, some people would doesn't at the end of the day, if you're American, if you're proud to be an American, we all know what they're all gonna say.
Well, and I mean, I use X a lot for my social media,
Hmm.
and I've discovered that the algorithm will change pretty rapidly. If you start engaging with positive material that you agree with or you like, then you'll get more.
Right,
If you comment a lot on things that you disagree with, you get a lot more of that.
right.
But even with that, there's just the left wing negativity. It just floods everything. And there were criticisms that night that there's hardly it's an elitist event. There were 85,000 people in the ellipse, and they said, well, they're not even at the event. They're outside. But when you saw the ending with the fireworks, you could see how close that really was. It
Oh
was
yeah.
one event. It wasn't a separate watch party, if you will. It was part of the event, just from a security purposes and just sheer real estate. They didn't have room for that many people on the lawn of the White House.
And the funny thing is not even just the left wingers. There are some fringe individuals on the right who are touting the same thing. And I'm really wondering where did everything change? Because there was at one point in life where I felt like you could be very patriotic about the country and still disagree with each other. Something like this would be just absolutely awesome for everybody. It could be a unifying thing, and it's in some cases what's going on right now kind of is, but in other cases it's really bringing out some of the very extreme naysayers of all
Hmm.
these different things, and it's really starting to show. I don't know if you want to say how loud that minority really is, but
Hmm.
they're being loud as can be. And the thing I found absolutely hilarious about this whole thing is that people want to think that this was like a very unique thing, but this isn't the first time a president has hosted fights at the White House.
Yeah, and I don't even want to defend it anymore. I
No.
just think people need to watch it, and you know, you just would be amazed if you don't let those things affect your opinion or your actions, and just do what you feel led to do, what you feel is right, and you would be surprised how often those things are wrong. Those
Hmm.
voices are wrong. I mean, Hokit. Did you hear about Hokit's comment?
Is that the Michelle Obama
Yeah.
comment? No, okay, yeah. I don't necessarily agree with him doing that on
Yeah.
like on nationals broadcast. But me being ever the comedian, I thought it was pretty funny. But that again, I have no problem poking fun at anybody. I will poke fun at Trump or any other president that comes our way. I'm an equal opportunity
Well,
asshole.
my initial reaction was a little bit chuckle because I was shocked that he said it
Hmm.
on live TV like that. But then, being that it was the White House, it felt somewhat inappropriate. But a lot like the criticisms of Trump, when Trump does something, the criticism is so over the top
Hmm.
that suddenly the actual offense doesn't seem so bad. Yeah, I would prefer that he didn't say that, but this was a 3 to 4 hour event.
Hmm.
And I mean, this was what, 3 seconds? And I haven't watched a lot of the UFC, but they say crazy stuff after the fights often.
Oh
They
yeah.
often, and Dana White has already made it very clear he doesn't censor the fighters. They can say whatever they want.
And I do got to give him a lot of respect for that.
So, yeah.
Like I look at things like with the NFL and the NBA. If you don't
Hmm.
speak to a very specific demographic on beliefs, then you're kind of ostracized. Think back that one Steeler game. The one player we had who was Army Ranger and all that stuff. This
Uh,
was the height of.
Alejandro Villanueva.
Yes, thank you. Uh, there was, because this was at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, all the riots were going on, racism was the talk of the town across the nation, and a lot of people were not showing their true patriotism when it came time for the national anthem. A lot of people wouldn't stand, a lot of people, the whole kneeling thing. Some teams wouldn't even go out into onto the field for
Mhm.
the national anthem, whereas he went against the grain on everything because and you and I can understand that sentiment. We're both veterans. That we feel it's a great insult to disrespect our national anthem like that, and we always made it a case to stand loud and proud, put your hand on your chest, and honor the country that men like me and you signed up to defend.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and forth on that thing, and I think that if people want to kneel for the flag, that's their choice.
I mean,
I'm
yeah,
not going to demonize them, but back to the Hokett thing. We've already given it too much talk in
right.
terms of how significant that was in the whole event that happened that night. It was just a minuscule, literally like 3 seconds out of this multi-hour, extremely patriotic, nothing but positive event. And so a lot of the people that are screaming the loudest about it didn't even watch. I mean, they're the kind of people that watch these little clips that other social media influencers pull and say, "Oh, look how horrible these people are," and they just run with that. So they don't even know what they're talking about.
And no, and honestly, it's like kind of back to what you said. I always found that there are certain people that just cannot just enjoy the moment, and they just have to find a way to make a negative comment or criticize.
Mhm.
I mean, hell, I can even admit, like, I've even dated people that were like that, and it would drove me up a wall like no end. But um, it's just it was an awesome event. Fighting combat sports is a not just a United States centric fun like fun style sport. It's across the world. You can find combat sports from wrestling to
Mhm.
other martial arts across the globe. It is something that is universal for us as a species, dating back to the time of the Greeks. So, like, why couldn't we just put everything aside for one night and just enjoy it? Just enjoy watching a bunch of the world's greatest athletes pummel the piss out of each other on the south lawn of the White House.
Well, because some people are playing, they're just fighting their battle all the time, and they can't put that down. So I think the best thing to do though is to not engage with it. Just what I've been trying to do is, I mean, I still see and hear things that are just absolutely ridiculous, and obviously we're talking about it now.
Mhm.
But I feel like the best thing to do is almost not even acknowledge it
Yeah.
in some cases. I mean, this was if this had been and the same event with a Democrat president, the media coverage, the media atmosphere leading up to the event would have been the exact complete opposite.
Mhm. Which
So you would have gone to it with a positive attitude, even though. So I mean, they say that, well, half the country is conservative, half the country this and that, but that's deceptive because conservatives don't have a 50% influence over the culture. The media, Hollywood, music, the left wing liberal media has probably 90% of the influence over the culture.
Mhm.
So, I mean, so that they created this aura of negativity around it, and it was just totally unfounded. If anything, I think it may have helped the event because people went in subconsciously with a low expectation and it way over delivered. Just the
Mhm.
visuals alone at night with the White House and the fireworks, and it was just fantastic.
Mhm. And here's my other thing. It's like kind of going back to what you said. If this was done by other presidents, if you were to turn it around and let's just say, for argument's sake, if Joe Biden hosted this type of event at the White House, I can almost guarantee you those of us like me and people like me and you would have still thought it was a really awesome event,
Oh, something like this, sure.
because this is something that, like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now, do I believe Joe Biden would have hosted an event like this? No, I would have kind of pictured him doing more of that. I don't know if you saw it. It was
I saw it.
the at
Everybody knows what you're talking about.
just for those that don't know what I'm talking about, the special runway model event for the LGBTQ community out in the City Hall in New York City, hosted by Mondami.
Oh, that's not what I'm talking about.
Well,
Okay.
that's what I was referring to. Like it happened just a couple of weeks ago, and if you want to do an event, I'm not gonna knock you for it. But I personally think if Joe Biden or Kamala were in office right now, that would have had more of a forefront event
Mhm.
at the White House versus something like that. And I'll tell you, I'm not gonna knock those people for wanting to celebrate the way they want to celebrate. I'm a live and let live kind of guy, but at the same time, it's not something I would be proud of seeing at the White House. So I guess you could say it just really depends on each individual person, because
Mhm.
those individuals would look at these events and like,
Mhm.
no, this is bad. But I would be doing the same exact thing to them if they did their preferred event.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I guess it's just a matter of how much do you care enough to really raise a stink about it, and are you going to let it affect your life negatively? Me personally, I wouldn't let anything like that affect my life negatively, regardless of how I feel about it, because it's not affecting how I pay my bills. It's not affecting my happiness. My happiness is welcome from
Mhm.
everything else around me. So, and that's the thing I think I find the most crazy is how people can let stuff like this and the big divides that are in between us pretty much define how they live their lives.
Mhm.
There are people that I know that they have a happy marriage, children, they got jobs, a house. They may not be living the most luxurious life, but they've got relatively what the standard life. And they look at stuff that's been going on in this nation and they're like, "Oh my god, my life is miserable because of it." I was like, "Well, if you're going to let what goes on in the political world and stuff that doesn't directly affect you negatively affect your life, and what are you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is sad that people, their politics is their whole identity, their whole life, and it determines their happiness. And yeah, it's not a
That
good way to be.
that I
Should never
identify
outsource your happiness and contentment in life. You're in
gee,
control of those things.
exactly.
Which, by the way, so the next event that we were going to talk about was the World Cup, and
Mhm.
I had a similar experience with that. I would say when I started seeing the flood of videos on TikTok from tourists, mostly European at this point, talking about how awesome the United States is, that it's nothing like what they expected
Mhm.
because of, and they most of them literally said from the media, we expected miserable people. We expected divisive people. We didn't expect kindness, politeness, a welcoming attitude. We didn't expect it to be so clean and safe and fun and just filled with all these big awesome places to eat and go out, and just some of the, Walmart. You know, Walmart's become sort of an insult on social media, the people of Walmart, that kind of thing. And, you see Europeans, look at this place, look at all the things you can buy here.
Mm.
It was, and it similar to the UFC event. I was surprised by how much I was surprised to see that, because it had been so long since you saw so much positivity about this country.
It was refreshing, I'm not gonna
And
lie.
that's, again, that's the left, the left wing, progressive, liberal, whichever group you have to be in. Those each mean slightly different things. They all are pessimistic about the past and the present, with the idea that we need to do something different in the future. They focus on the negative, the bad. Where conservative, when you're trying to conserve something, you're focusing more on the positive in your
Mhm.
history and the positive in your presence and how you can leverage that going forward.
Mhm.
So just the nature of it is negative. One is a pessimistic, point of view, and the other is inherently more positive,
Oh, absolutely.
generally speaking.
Oh yeah, like it has been very refreshing. I mean, now granted, I feel like some of those tourists have not been to certain of the places within the United States that would be considered dangerous. It's not like they're holding these events in the most highest crime statistically areas,
Right.
but I mean, at the same time, I feel like people are also wanting to give a good impression and want to. I think a lot of that's kind of purposeful, and I think
Well, crime, poverty, those are real problems, and
yeah.
they're real areas. Every country has them, but it doesn't mean that that's all that we're about. And that was the thing. They were under the impression that America was all the negatives that they're always seeing on social media and
Mhm.
in the news media.
Right.
I guess I've watched some soccer. I've
Mhm.
never watched, I'm not a big soccer fan, but I'll tell you, I've become a huge World Cup fan. And
Mhm.
it's not just the hype around America. Obviously, the U.S. team has played really well, but just seeing all the other teams' fans bringing their culture and their way of celebrating and things like the Scots in Boston and the Norwegians and
Mhm.
all this, it's like almost like a large invasion from a certain country, but in a positive way,
Mhm.
an invasion of fun.
Oh yeah, like it is refreshing. I think it really boils down to where what's going on in the world. All of us little people have the ability to just come together, enjoy life together, enjoy some type of event, and just do what a lot of our core principles were based on. And what I mean by that is think about a lot of what America was founded on. It was originally founded on those that lived over in Europe who wanted to better their lives and be able to practice religion freedom, like freely. So a lot of us are now a lot of us are based on Christian principles, even though we accept everybody. But at the end of the day, it's all about love thy neighbor, enjoy, and don't covet thy neighbor,
Hmm.
basically. And
Well, yeah, covet. You bring that in. That's the engine of what's happening with the rise of socialism. Elon Musk becoming a trillionaire. The things that are being said about him make absolutely no sense whatsoever.
mhm,
As far as taking his money and you can't become a trillionaire without trampling on other people or taking money from it. It's all wrong. It's there's no truth in it and how economics works whatsoever.
no,
But the people that are saying it who know that that's not even sound economics, they don't really care. They're just playing into the jealousy, the envy part that's always been the engine of socialism and communism. That's how these socialist regimes have come to, or I should say, how these communist regimes have all come into power by dividing people and using envy, jealousy against the elites, if you will, the wealthy, the educated, that sort of thing.
mhm. And the thing that's funny that I think is funny is they like try to paint the people like Elon as like full of greed and corruption, but let's be honest, what's one of the things that breeds greed and corruption more than anything? And I personally believe it is envy and it is jealousy.
Well,
Like you want it's the common conception when it comes to a thief. What is it? Why does a thief do what they do? Because a lot of time they want what somebody else has. And instead of doing things the proper way and earning that said thing, they'd rather just take it. And that's kind of what they're doing. That's kind of why, like, every a lot of the left leaning individuals like to tax everything to high hell.
mhm.
And just like the whole concept of the wealth tax and this, that, and the other. The one that where I first saw that coming really hard was even during the Black Lives Matter times when they're
Mhm.
talking about reparations. And it's I started thinking around that time, okay, you want me or people like me, individuals that had nothing to do with which we can all agree is the horrors that was slavery in America. We none of us had anything to do with that, but you expect me to sacrifice what I worked hard and earned and give it to you, even though you might not have any relation to anybody that was potentially a slave? And you just want me to give you my stuff and my money just because at some point someone who looked like you was oppressed? I'm sorry, but people that looked like us were oppressed at one point. Everybody has oppressed everybody throughout history.
Well, I mean, one of the problems is when you go into history and you try to interpret and judge history through the current lens. I mean, morality is obviously morality, and,
Mhm.
and that's fine to pass a judgment of morality. But I mean, if it gets to the point where you're calling people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams evil, well, John Adams, I don't think he owned slaves, but anyone that owns slaves is an evil person and we have to erase them from our history. That is bad history
Mhm.
to do that. So,
Well,
and
go ahead.
you talk about our ancestors didn't even have anything to do that. I mean,
No.
we're German Irish. We're products of the German Irish immigrants. We didn't come to our ancestors didn't come to this country until like late 1800s, early 1900s. We weren't even here during the Civil War and
Mhm.
slavery. So, I mean, but what they'll say, yeah, I hate to repeat yeah, their propaganda, but they would say, well, you're a recipient of a system, that sort of thing. So
Recipient of a system, I think that's hilarious because
beneficiary of a system.
if anybody's a beneficiary of anything, it would be like myself, my brother and sister, your grandsons, my nephews. Like they, I would say, were ones that have been pretty well blessed with all that stuff. And it is honestly due to the hard work that you and my mother did in the early stages of your life. I mean, when someone, and I tell people this all the time, like if they want to try to throw the whole privilege, I'll be like, maybe yes, I'm privileged, but I'll tell you why I'm privileged is because I grew up in a home with two sets of parents. One of when I'll use you, I would always use you as an example. One of which who was born very poor, didn't have very little, and you had your own fair share of life mistakes that there was a fair chance that the life that you were able to give us was not, it almost didn't happen
Hmm.
based off of some of the mistakes you made earlier in life. But you were able to correct your mistakes and you put in the work and you gave us a hell of an upbringing. A lot of my closest friends always said, like, oh, you grew up rich. And I'm like, no, not really, but not by what I would consider rich. But I would say I was rich in the privilege of just having two great, hardworking parents that just didn't want us to want or need for anything.
So a lot of people, in your age group and younger would say that we had it easy. They look at some numbers of, and granted, I think that the cost of living relative to wages is a real issue and a real problem we have in our time. But then to extrapolate that and to say, well, all these older people, they had it really easy. That's just another form of that same envy
hmm
thing. So,
And it's just like, honestly, I look at everything as the challenges and the struggles you have in your life is based off of your choices.
mhm.
I may not be as well off as you and my mother were at my current age, and that is mostly due to my own choices. I acknowledge that. I didn't went against the grain on certain things, and that's kind of what ended up happening. But now, one thing that I'm happy about, at least with me, is I was never very materialistic. I'm the kind of guy that could be happy living out of a camper as long as I've got a full fridge, a bed to sleep on. I'm pretty happy. Like I don't want or need for much. Like my pride and joys of my life material wise is my giant ass TV and my pickup truck. And with that, I am content as a cucumber. I don't really need anything else more. Like I would even say like sometimes like the extent of the way you raised us is almost like the upper echelon of what I would be comfortable living
Well, I
with.
mean, I think it's good to be content on a day-to-day basis,
Mhm.
but I mean, when you think about your future, it's also good to have aspirations
Mhm.
and goals and to want to better yourself and to work towards that.
Which is why we started
Um,
this, folks.
yeah, well, and that's the that should be a positive. That should
Mhm.
be a motivator and a driver for you, and not. I get the impression from things I see and hear that there's a lot of people that it sort of paralyzes them. They've fallen into this. It's too hard. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm a victim of a bad economy, and somebody, the government, has to step in and fix it. Until something changes, if until the government does something to help me, nothing's going to change about my life. And I can't read people's minds, so I can't honestly say who's thinking that way or how many. But if you're able-bodied, and then that's just not a good way to live. It's not and it's not a matter of whether I think you're right or wrong. It's a matter of that's not in your best interest. That's
No.
not what's going to result in the best life for you. If you live the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of your life with an attitude of always looking to better your situation, to always to look at the situation and look at every problem from the standpoint of what should I do about this problem? What can I do to move myself in a different direction? What can I do to move myself forward? If you don't do that on a daily basis and every day you go, I'm screwed, it's pointless, there's no hope, and you do that for 5, 10 years, 15 years, guess what? You're not getting anywhere. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
No.
So it's just not good for you if that's the way you're living. It's not a matter of anyone judging you. Look at it from the standpoint of what's good for you in your life.
Yeah, I mean, you know me well enough to know that I'm not one that seeks validation or care from anybody. I live my life the way I live my life, and I only validation I need is of my own. But I agree with you, like, and I will say there was one point in my life where I lived in an envious way. I
Mhm.
looked at people of what they had, or in from my standpoint, I looked at myself as like, man, I'm working my ass off. I feel like I'm doing all the right things, and then I'm seeing all these people getting handed stuff, whatever the situation it was. Like for example, people that raked in all that unemployment money during COVID, basically by choosing that they didn't want to work, and they were making more money than they did at their actual jobs. And I worked every day in COVID. I worked in the healthcare realm, and I not only did I work every day, I worked 12, 16-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes even seven. I think the
Mhm.
longest stretch I ever did was a 30-day stretch of no days off. And my envy was based off of, why am I here working my ass off when people can sit on their ass and do nothing and bring in more? And I'll tell you, that time of my life was a really miserable time for me. And it was whenever I stopped being envious and I just looked at myself and I just counted the blessings that I did have. And I was like, okay, here's what I had to be thankful for. Now, what can I do from here to make my life better? Whether it be for myself, my family, those around me, what have you.
Mhm.
When I stopped living in envy and just focused on, here's where I'm at, here's where I want to be, I'm just going to continue working my ass off to get to where I feel like I want to be. I'm not going to care
Mhm.
what anybody else is going, because I don't know what anybody else's life situations are, and it's none of my business anyways.
Well, one of the principles of life, if you can look at it in terms of diet and exercise, you can look at it in terms of you know education, really everything. But economies work this way too. And what I'm talking about is short-term pain for long-term gain,
Hmm.
short-term sacrifice, short-term hard work pays dividends in the long term. But short term living in comfort, short term seeking, the pleasure of today to avoid sacrifice to avoid the discomfort and the hard things today is going to lead to long-term pain. It only makes your life worse. If
Mhm.
so, if you just can eat bad foods and don't exercise all day every day, that's pleasurable. That feels good. Who doesn't want to do that? But the reason people don't do it is because there's a price to pay in the long term.
Oh, yeah.
And during COVID, all that money that was spent by the government that in stimulus checks and unemployment and money for small business to close, and this all started under Trump. All that is what contributed to the Biden era, and which never will goes away, right? That inflation, this 10% a year inflation. So there's just skyrocketing prices. So we felt in the moment, hey, look, I got a $1,600 check. Every American got we're getting another $1,600 check. Add that money up. It's only $1,600 to you, but count how many checks went out.
Mhm.
It didn't even just go out to taxpayers. It went out to everybody.
Yeah.
So you add up that money, and the money that went to that was all deficit spending. Deficit spending causes the government to increase the money supply, which devalues the money, which causes permanent inflation.
Mhm.
Now there was another, and now they talked about was the supply and demand inflation because of the shutdown of the supply chain. Goods became expensive because they were hard to get. There was no supply and there was more demand than supply. That's temporary. That's not a permanent inflationary event because, and if you listen to when the Fed speaks, that even when they talked about tariffs and things, it depends on other conditions whether that's going to affect inflation. Because the reality of it is, if the prices go up, then that's more incentive to create more supply to meet the demand, and it drives the prices down.
Mhm.
Just like we're seeing in oil prices right now. Oil prices increased because of the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, because that reduced supply.
Mhm.
So when you reduce supply, the price goes up. They sign an MOU. That moment they signed it, nothing changed. The supply hadn't changed yet, but commodities are a speculative market. So the
Mhm.
pricing is based on what they think is going to be in the future. That was not inflation. Oil prices went up, oil prices will come down again. And that's why Trump and he shot himself in the foot when he said, I don't care about inflation. He was talking in terms of the negotiation and doing the right thing in this negotiation with Iran. That's what he was talking about. But, his point was it's going to go away. It's temporary because as soon as we reopen the strait, it all goes back to normal. So, you know, consider that.
It's funny as you told me, yeah, I got some long-winded stuff to say, but honestly, I think that was all good stuff.
You mentioned, caused me to think about my childhood and upbringing. You're familiar with the Pittsburgh potty,
Oh yeah, I
right?
got one at home. I love it.
Okay, so the toilet in the basement that everybody says they were put in there because the mill workers, when you get off work, you were dirty. You were very, very dirty. So you went in, you didn't want to come into the house and bring that dirt in. So you went into the basement, you changed, used the toilet. Most of the time there was a shower down there. That's true. Okay. But that's not the original Pittsburgh potty. The origin of the Pittsburgh potty is the fact that that was the only toilet in the house. That's where I lived when I was a child. We were living in older row houses in Lawrenceville, and the only toilet was a Pittsburgh potty in the basement. So when we went to bed at night, we had a literal pot, like in the old days, like a thunder mug.
A piss pot.
It's exactly what we had in our bedroom. And we were told if you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to pee, you use the pot because we didn't want us going down 2 floors to the cold basement.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
No bathtub. We had the Pittsburgh potty in the back, and then we had a drop drain in the front with water lines for the washer and dryer, and we used those galvanized tubs. Looks like a horse trough.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would put that down on the floor. They'd fill that up. There you go, get a bath. And when we were done, you called dad and he would lift up the galvanized tub and dump the water into the floor drain.
Mhm. Talk about privilege, folks. This guy literally bathed in a damn horse trough in a basement, a dank old basement in the city of Pittsburgh. Yeah, talk to me about
Now that
privilege.
was in the 60s. Now, sure, most people actually had though, but those were old rental homes, and but that was the state when plumbing came in. I don't know if it was in the 20s and the 30s or whatever, but when they first brought plumbing into homes, that's what they did. They put the all the plumbing down on the ground floor. Now it's pretty quick now to go up one floor to put a kitchen sink in and a drain for the kitchen, but that was all that we had.
Mm-hmm.
That was all the plumbing.
It just puts a lot of things into perspective. Like even my situation now, like I wouldn't say I'm definitely I would say on the lower end, even though by comparison, if you took what I make now to compare to when you were my age, or even in like the 60s and 70s, what I make now would have equaled out to hundreds of thousands of dollars back then.
Yeah.
But even then, I'm on the low end of the spectrum, but my house I have two toilets, so I'm
Mhm.
blessed with that. I got one all the way up on the top floor and in the basement, so I'm spoiled. I've got sinks and just plumbing running on each floor. I've got forced AC, and I've got decent power, and it's a sturdy, even though it's an old house, it's a sturdy house.
Mhm.
And honestly, like I look at that as in a way that I'm blessed, because even now, for as what some people would say is that I'm struggling, which in a sense, yes, I am, but I think I would say I'm managing it. I wouldn't honestly trade it for anything, because I earned that.
Mhm.
I worked my ass off to get that.
Mhm.
Quite honestly, I can thank the fact of my time of service is the reason why I was able to get that.
Right.
Thank God for a VA loan.
Well, yeah, VA, no down payment. Low interest rates were super low at the time anyway. But one of the things that all these look how much a house costs and look how much people earn. They don't take into effect the regional variances.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at average home prices, the averages are greatly skewed by Northern California, the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, all of coastal California, Florida, coastal Florida. So places where home values have skyrocketed is definitely skewing, the average. So, but if you look at it more regionally and state by state, I mean, Western Pennsylvania is a much more affordable place to live.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you won't make, you'll probably make less in terms of salary for a given job here, but certainly home prices are much lower.
Mm-hmm.
But again, see, you kind of, I think your house was built in the 50s.
1947.
Okay, so you've got one of these, yeah, that would be a boomer home.
Yeah,
That would be, the post-war. It's not big. It's just a cube, right? A two-story flash cube. It looks like
mm-hmm.
it's an old reference.
Yeah.
And but those are the kind of. So when they talk about people paying, these low figures for their homes, there were really small homes too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, when I was growing up, the Leave It to Beavers and the Ozzie and Harriets and things like that. That is not how I lived. That was rich people, where I came from. That was, when I was a kid, I watched those shows and said, boy, would it be nice to live in a house like that? Wouldn't it be nice to, my dad never wore a suit. My mother never wore a dress like that. It wasn't real life to me.
I guess it puts a lot of things into perspective. And I
Mhm.
mean, now there still some people nowadays that live like that, sure. But when you look at by comparison, I don't think it's much these days. I think if you look at almost every man in this country, I can almost guarantee you there was a time in his life where he had to wear a suit for something.
Mhm.
Even some of the poorest of the poor, they got a suit somewhere, even if it
Right.
was just a hand me down. And we're leagues from where we were. Now, yes, has there been some negative things that caught up? Of course, but where there's positivity, there's going to be negativity as well. You
Mhm.
can't avoid it. Like it's kind of funny with all the things that we've advanced in. It makes me think, man, who would have thought that now here in 2026, we're still back to that same old conversation of
Mhm.
whether or not communism is bad, and people saying that it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's like negatives are gonna follow no matter where you go. It's just gonna be what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
How are you gonna choose to live your life about it? And you could be one that sits there, bitches and moans and cries all the time, or you can live as happy as you can and enjoy certain
Mhm.
things that come around, like a UFC fight at the White House, like the World Cup coming to the United States, which a funny one that I've actually heard as a speculation is in the next round. Apparently the US is going up against England and they're speculating it's going to be on the 4th of July in Philadelphia.
Well, okay.
Now that's speculation. I have no way of confirming
Yeah,
that.
it's not true. The, they have one more game in group play against Turkey,
Mhm.
but they've already clinched. They call it the knockout round. We would call it the elimination round in U.S. terminology. But the
Talk about
U.S. is scheduled to play on July 1st, but the opponent is not known. So when I looked at the bracket, they had several divisions, like second place in this division or third place in this, that kind of thing. England might be a potential. I didn't look at who was in these divisions that they were saying were potentially our opponent. So it could happen.
yeah.
It could happen that the U.S. plays England on July 1st.
Don't get mad at me, crazy soccer fans, because I don't follow it. I'm just speculating, and I just heard some other speculation. I just think it'd be cool as hell that if on the 4th of July we played England in
Well,
Philadelphia.
I think that's what the talk was. I think it was more, wouldn't that be a cool thing? But July 1st, July 4th, it's pretty much
I mean, it doesn't hit the same.
yeah. Well, what day of the week is? I think July 1st is like a Wednesday.
The July 4th is a Saturday. I know that.
Okay, so yeah, July 1st is Wednesday, and the 4th is that Saturday. It's still in that kind of week.
Well, I'm gonna hope for that because that's a game I would actually take the time to watch because that would be another just. It feels like 2026 is a year of just
Right.
ain't this super American, and it's as much as people are just gonna continue to talk negative. I'm just gonna enjoy it. I love it.
So I think if anyone takes anything away from these things we talked about from this week, it's okay to be happy.
Yeah.
It's okay to be proud of America.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to say you're happy, just to look for something positive in your day and in your week and in your country, doesn't mean that you give up and say that we're not going to change anything.
Right.
No, I mean, I don't know. I don't understand how it's a good thing to have a completely defeatist attitude that everything is bad, everything's impossible. How does that help you move your life forward? How does that help you? I don't think it does. I think it's okay to say, this is good. I think we live in a net good country. I
Mm-hmm.
think the United States of America, the history of the United States as America is absolutely a net positive. Just imagine what the world would look like if it didn't happen. And that doesn't mean that bad things didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the Democrats are supporting Graham Plattner in Maine and saying things like, well, that's not everything. Well, okay, so you're proven that you can take some bad and still find the good.
Yeah.
So you're admitting to it. So why can't you do that with your country? Why can't you do that with, why can't you teach that to your kids as far as their futures and the economy? So things may be extremely difficult today, and you can't change it, but look for the things that you can change. What can you do to position yourself better? There's no guarantees,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, if all of your thinking is it's impossible, I can't, it's never going to change, then you're not going to come up with anything positive to move you forward.
No.
So it's a problem solution mindset. If you see problems in front of you, that's fine. But then work the problem.
Mhm.
Ask yourself, don't just, lean into those emotions. Ask yourself, what can I do to solve this problem?
Right.
What can I do?
Mhm.
And, look for those things that you can do and make little steps to move yourself forward.
Yeah.
And regardless of how much you achieve, maybe you set the bar super high and you only get halfway. But if you don't set a bar at all, if you keep it all the way down on the floor, you're not even going to get that halfway.
No, and then honestly, you don't even have to have everything solved at once.
Mhm.
Like, okay, let's like wind the clock back for me about a year ago. I was pushing 400 pounds, if not a little over. I My financial situation was about roughly what it is now. Maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse. I honestly don't remember, but I kind of came to a realization. I was like, okay, what's something that I can properly take care of right now? And what do I know I can do? And the first thing that I took on was my weight. Here I am, down from 400 pounds. Now I'm about 315. And I've done most of that in a period of 6 months. And I, and that is something I feel very accomplished about. And then it just gives me more motivation to accomplish the next goal.
It gives you confidence too.
It gives me confidence, and it just shows me like there was a once a point in my life where I didn't think that was possible for me.
Mhm.
But what the only thing that's got me in my way of doing anything was myself, whether it be my weight, my finances, my career, whatever. The only thing that was in my way was myself.
Mm.
So once I stopped throwing my own pity party and was just like, all right, well, me throwing a pity party for myself ain't doing anything. Time for me to just hunker down and act. And I think it's done wonders for me so far. And it's like space travel in a way. It's just a constant solving of issues that come up, and I'm just going to continue to attack them.
Mhm.
It's why we're doing this. It's like, if we can make something of this, that would be awesome. I would have no problem making this something more that is like something that we could do for a living. But if it doesn't end up that way, I'm not gonna be mad. I'm gonna be happy the fact that I got to do something like this with my dad and just had fun doing it. And
Mhm.
I learned a lot. And if there's one thing that I've gained from life through everything, the highs, the lows, is I've gained a wealth of knowledge that I can pass down
Mhm.
to the boys, to my own kids one day. And even just simply like some of my close friends, their kids.
Mhm.
The knowledge I've gained, and it's funny, I kind of had like a conversation with my best friend about this not too long ago, because he would sit there and talk about like things in his life that made things different. He wished things could be different. Yeah, we all wish things could be different, and there's always things we would have done differently looking back. But now knowing that going forward, you have knowledge you can pass on to that next generation so they don't make the same mistake as you,
Mhm.
and that's really all you can ask for.
Yeah, and that's a great point to pursue things. Pursue podcasting, pursue, I did private pilot's license. I pursued a lot of things that I got to a certain point and said, this isn't a casual thing. This is a lifestyle if I'm going to keep it going. And I enjoyed it, but I'm not interested in continuing.
Right.
I'm just done. I'm done. But I learned so much going through that process. And, so not every pursuit turns out to be something that, becomes part of your life permanently,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all journeys that you can learn from. Absolutely.
Exactly. Maybe you should look into writing a book.
Yeah.
I feel like you could make a good one.
Let's wrap this up with a question.
All right.
Do you think the American dream is dead?
No, absolutely not. And then I don't think the American dream is ever going to be dead
Mhm.
until this plot of land is nothing but fire and ash.
Well, what do you think, for people that don't sense it, for people that would disagree with you? What do you think? What would you say? What has to change for the American dream to be a widespread reality? like it once was. Just an accepted thing.
Well, the bad cop way I'll put this is get your head out of your asses and just push forward and just
Yeah.
realize that anything that you're hearing out there, sure, there's people out there that are going to say all these negative things, but
Mhm.
the only thing that can institute positive change is yourself. And like America, if there's one thing that we are, is we're stubborn, we're tenacious, and we
Mhm.
keep chugging even despite all these different events that should have potentially ended us. Take it even back to the economic Great Depression.
Mhm.
We came back from that. We can come back from just about everything else.
Mhm.
So the matter is if are you going to let it beat you down or are you going to push along with it? And that really just determines. And if you could be happy in the process, then so be it.
I was thinking the same thing. I think the thing that has to change is attitude.
Hmm.
That was my what I experienced this week with the Freedom 250 UFC event and with the World Cup. The I didn't even realize. I never would have said I was negative down on America, and then, it's just this negative subconscious vibe. When I saw this positivity, it's just like the contrast was so evident. I realized that my attitude wasn't right. I was
Hmm.
letting these outside influence pollute my attitude. Intellectually, I would have told you I don't feel this way. Okay. But seeing myself go through, experiencing the positiveness, the positivity about America on TikTok and the positivity that the USC event was really a wake up call. Like I did not expect that. If
Hmm.
if that was my true sense of American positivity and pride, that wouldn't have been such a surprise. I'd have been, well, of course. So yeah, I think the first step is really a change of attitude.
Right.
Focus on solutions. Stop thinking about, all your problems and look at each one of them, say, what can I do to solve it?
You heard it from him, folks. This is words of wisdom from Papa Bear.
All right. Uh,
Well, I guess we'll call it a wrap from here. So thank you for joining us on Full Contact. I am Dean. This is my father, Bob. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you guys next time. Tuesdays.